Welcome back. Like I said earlier, we'll be x-raying the powerful influence the media has in shaping and sustaining democracy in Nigeria. And our guest is Development Communications Specialist Leonard, joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Leonard. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Good morning. Good to be back here once again.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive into the subject matter. We're discussing the role of media in building, of course, shaping democracy, especially, well, in Nigeria. I want us to backtrack a little bit to the military era, to the pre-democracy era. How was the media able to navigate the murky waters of military authoritarianism to effectively discharge their duties? How was it for the media at that time?
It wasn't easy. It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. I wasn't actively, let me say, at the top level of the media like I am now. So I watched and I saw what was going on, even though I was part of the whole, I was involved in the whole process one way or the other. It wasn't easy. It was something of courage and determination. And I don't really see media people these days demonstrating that kind of courage. Several were arrested. For you to speak up, it was like you were planning your own suicide or something like that. It wasn't funny at all in any way. It wasn't funny during that time. And we should just thank God for the times we have now where it's a lot more easier, even though it is not been easy, even current day, but it's a lot more easier to speak up than that time. So it was a really terrible time for the media. The media was the most hit during the military era. So you could see soldiers just come in and they ransack media houses, pack all the papers, shut down the station. Soldiers could bust into your studio like we're talking now and pick up a journalist and he's gone. For the next 1 month, he won't be seen by his family or anybody, just like that. And we don't want to talk about even the case of the killing of someone like Dele Giwa and, others like that. So it was really terrible. It wasn't funny, that period.
All right, but you did mention the fact that you don't see such courage in the media and in journalism as was obtainable in those days. What in your in your experience would you say gave power to such courage, gave strength to such courage that in the face of threats of death, journalists went out and discharged their duties? What would you say was the source of their strength at that time?
It's the professionalism. That is what the profession calls for. So anybody who does not have that one way or the other might not be really called into the profession. That's one of the demands. Now, the media is said to be the fourth estate of the realm. And what that means, I've said it on a couple of times, which media people seem not to fully understand these days, is that when you're fourth estate of the realm, you are like omnipresent. You're omniscient. You know everything, you see everything, you dictate what happens in the society. And so, with that, there is no military dictator, no politician, whether corrupt or good, no one that can really do anything anywhere in the world without the use of the media. There is always one media person behind whatever policies, whatever things that person is doing. The media dictates, like for instance, now the more you put certain things on air, people start thinking about such things. Media has been used to push for, if not for the media, for instance, we remember the during the struggle, the radio coup d'etat, by Nyadeco people. Now, some of the people who were behind that station, some of their names were not there. Some people don't even know them, but I know the government officials know them because the present president was part of that movement. I know some of them today, who are still, active even in the media space today. So that is what the profession calls for. When you are the fourth estate of the realm, you are the one to tell the president what to do. You're the one to tell the society what to do. You're the one to tell the society to stand up for their rights. You're the one to give courage and hope to the society. So, but when the media is not doing that, even the media itself begins to lose its courage, begins to lose its stance. Professionalism, it's not about just getting up and saying anything you like. No, it's about balance. It's about accountability. It's about transparency. It's about fact checking. Before you get up and say anything, know fully well that you're saying the right thing. It's no, you're not saying it because you've been induced by somebody, because you've been bribed by somebody. You're saying it because that is the right thing to do, and you have all the facts to back it up. And that is what the profession calls for. So we had professionals then who were trained, and they were also trained on the creativity of getting information, creativity of passing out information. You know, that is what the profession is all about. And when you have that in you, it gives you courage to stand up and say things, because you could stand by what you say.
All right, it's actually interesting that you mentioned Nadeko, right? Since we are talking about pre-democracy era, how would you describe the partnership? Was there a partnership between the media and civil rights group? Well, case in point, Nadeko. How did the media help Nadeko champion its cause during that era?
It was the media that was championing the cause, actually, not even the Nadeko people. They were talking. See, if you gather somewhere and you talk, you can talk from now till tomorrow. And if the media does not put it out there, nobody will hear. There are many countries in this world where there are lots of dissent, but you will never ever see it on here because the media is censored. you know and there's also self-censorship within media. So there are certain media organizations that you might not find certain things. So during that kind of era, it took courage for media people to put this information out. So the media was the main one behind. And that is why over the years, when we celebrate a lot of these things, and you guys, us, media people, we don't even promote ourselves. We don't even talk about the role the media played. And I'm glad that you guys are talking about that today. We don't celebrate ourselves. When we have peaceful elections, so to say, after when lots of organizations come up and say, there'll be bloodshed, there'll be this, and the media starts doing peace-related things. That's what we've been doing since 2009. I've been actively behind that movement, Media Peace Day for elections since 2009. We've been doing that. So for all elections, they'll say, there'll be violence. Then the media starts putting out those peace items, start making people see the need for peaceful elections, start doing things to curb voter apathy, putting out programs to get people to come out and stand by your vote, putting out so many things like that. And what do we see? Over the years since then till now, we've seen reduced violence in elections. I've been part of that process all through, and it was the media. All media organizations in Nigeria were the ones doing that. But at the end of the election, what happens? What do we see on the various media stations? We'll see politicians coming out to congratulate themselves for having given us peaceful elections, and all that. Whereas the real work was done by the media. So it was actually a media campaign, not CSO campaign. CSOs cannot do anything if the media does not show what they are doing. If you say something, the media has to take it out. If the people don't get it, if various that's why even when the military want to take over, what do they do first? They run to the radio station first to announce. Once we hear that, Marshall, our kids these days won't know what that sounds like, and we thank God for that because it's not a good sound. When we hear that on air, we know something is up somewhere. So it was the media that did that. Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little about print media. I remember, Tell Magazine, News Watch, those were powerful outlets and media tools in those days. What do you think happened to the print media? Why haven't we seen much of activities happening with the print? What are your thoughts?
Well, let's say it's the fact that technology has taken over a lot of things. And so unlike before, you didn't have the internet. So a lot of people would buy newspapers to read, to find out information and things like that. But now it's all changed. You have the internet, you have Twitter and all that's taking over. So there's more of that going on online. So that is why even the print media now is moving online. Any print magazine or media that does not have online presence, I don't know, they most likely won't exist. So that is just technology. And guess what? The same thing is also happening to the broadcast media. It's the same technology you used to do your Instagram Live and Facebook Live. We're using Zoom right now that you used to broadcast. So people don't sit to wait for terrestrial TV anymore. A lot of people will be watching you right now on your website, on YouTube. So it's just technology that made that. But the writers are still there. Now we have convergence. We have someone like, let me give an example. um I usually use him as an example because he was part of projects we had in the past while I was at the BBC. Was one of the resource persons we were using on elections reporting and things like that to train journalists. His name is Jide Ojo. He's always on air on one station or the other, but he also has a column on newspaper. And then that same column, he also posts it online on his pages and all that. Most times I don't read the column on the hard copy newspaper. I read it either on his social media handle or one other online platform. So it's just technology, but the writers, the people are still there doing their job day in, day out.
Right, you actually spoke to journalists being able to source information and effectively pass it to the audience. Now, in as much as you made your point, print has become outdated of some sort because of technology, there are other creative ways of passing information. I'm thinking of a particular radio drama which you produced. Could you tell us a little about it, what its objectives were, and if it was able to achieve its impact as a creative way of passing information?
Okay. I was with the BBC for 14 years, BBC Media Action specifically, former BBC World Service Trust. And for 12 of those years, I was head of media development. So it is more of a combination. Now, the BBC had the story drama where you have role plays. So you play situations happening and then people see it and people fall in line. So that drama over the years has changed perception, has changed even the way the politicians say things. In fact, there are some cases where drama had been written long ago and produced, recorded. By the time it comes out, you just find out that it's relating to something that is happening at a particular spot. We've seen politicians change their ways as a result of that. I produced a radio program called Flavor. I was second producer. My friend Perry was the first producer. And that program also took up something that was difficult for people to talk about for young people. We also had the Talk Your Own series, the Talk Your Own discussion program, where journalists used to ask me, they say, we could not talk about this thing on air. How come you guys were able to talk about it on Talk Your Own, and then you make great achievement? Now, the thing is this: there's creativity with production. So as we're producing those things, we invested a lot in training journalists to do the same. And that is what is lacking today. Then I was responsible for 80% of the training of journalists in Nigeria. All stations were even training the CSOs, even organizations, supporting organizations like even Yaga today that's doing very, very well, then. So it was a combination of all these put together. So we could bring in the resource persons like the GD Ojos, come in to give give expert information, Larry Arogundade, Agev, and all those kind of people. We pull them together, the Otivers, we pull them together, they share this knowledge, and then we train the journalists how to take this information that these CSOs and experts have shared and turn them into creative content that you can pass on to people. Not content that will come and just knock people off. No, it's something that comes in gradually, quietly. So, for instance, during the 2009 Anambra elections, when people said, "Oh, there will be trouble, there will be trouble, there will be trouble," we went in there, we trained the radio and TV stations in the state, we trained people who were doing even children's program on how to produce programs that will make people come out and vote. You could use, I remember the late Pastor Ogo of ABS Onitsha then, she had a cooking program. And that program showed people how to stand and wait, what to eat, how to get little things to take to the polling unit so that they could stand and wait when the vote is being counted so you can secure your vote. And these things come in gently, softly, and that's how we're able to achieve all that. But what do we have today? We don't have organizations, whether government or even the National Orientation Organization is there, INEC, even the CSOs and NGOs who claim to be working on election issues today. We don't have them investing much in training journalists on how to do these things. And unlike then, you can see the number of stations now. As of 2009, we had more state-owned stations than private-owned stations. But today, state-owned stations will just be like 20% of the private-owned stations. So there's proliferation. And a lot of people coming into the industry from the schools, coming in just like that without proper training, because to be able to do these things and do it well and cause this change, you need a lot of training. It's not just what you get up. Remember, you asked the question of what gives the journalist that courage. It is that professional training. You need to be trained on how to do it. Just like the military person, they won't give anybody guns, to just take and just go. You have to be properly trained to be able to do it. And that is one of the biggest problems now in the country, that lack of training to be able to build journalists. And it's not about coming out and shouting, like I've heard some media people say, "Oh, I shook that person, I shook the politician." It's about bringing out those information that's useful to the public, to help the public. That is what you're there for as a journalist. So you have to be able to creatively do it in such a way that you get the information, pass it to the public, and it causes change.
All right, brilliant. You did mention some things, and you said that there's this recent proliferation of media stations, and it's interesting to note that some of those stations are owned by politicians. Now, how would you advise a journalist, a media person working in such an establishment? How is it that they are supposed to do their jobs without actually being forced to align to a particular, line of reporting? I'm trying to see how I can put this across. How do
I
you
do.
deal with politicians interfering with your job as a media person, especially during election seasons, when the media station you work for is owned by a politician?
Well, that's one of the, let me say, that's one of the biggest excuses. I don't want to call it challenge that media people mention today. And it's unfortunate that out of the so many stations in Nigeria, close to 900 or more broadcast organizations in this country today, not up to 10% are owned by journalists. It's sad that that is the case. Now, but the truth about it is this training I'm talking about and professionalism. Let me tell you the truth. The NBC finds a lot of stations and a lot of organizations. And let me put this out there. There is no media organization in the world that does not have an agenda. I, as Leonard, I have an agenda. My agenda is to pass development, to transform lives. It is my agenda. Every single organization has an agenda. There's something someone is aligning to. Now, you as a professional, it takes creativity to be able.
All right, welcome back. We had, before we went on a break, our guest Leonard Aro on Zoom, and he was responding to a question which I posed to him earlier. All right, Mr. Leonard, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes,
Please.
the usual network. And this network issue is the biggest challenge for the media, not even this censorship we are talking about now. And let's use this opportunity to call the government. If we really want to help the media in this country, we have to ensure that we have stable internet and broadband. Just like you go to the poorest country in Europe that is not even earning 10% of Nigeria, they have steady internet. And when you have that, you could do a lot of things. Now, that is the key. So, one, I talked about professionalism, you knowing what to do as a journalist. Then creativity. Now, and I'm calling to all general managers of all heads of stations, of these stations owned by politicians. When you are engaged, that is the point where you tell your owner, even state-owned stations. I can give the example of someone I revere so much, Mr. Segun Olaleye, who was the general manager of Ogun State Broadcasting Television. Then it was called Gateway. You know, he proposed that name, I think, change it to Gateway Television then, you know, to make it have some kind of commercial standing and competition. With the then governor of Ogun State, Benga Daniels. When he was appointed, he came in with his resignation letter and said, "Sir, if you don't give me free hand to run this place professionally, here is my resignation letter." So as journalists, when we talk about staying away from brown envelope and all that, we know the economic situation is there. But I'm telling you the there are creative ways of making money by standing your ground. And you have to do this from day zero when you are being employed. I worked with the BBC. When I came into that organization, we have contracts we signed. And there were some certain things I do, and I put it there and I said, I do these things to help young people grow. Now, if you would stop me from doing this thing I do to help young people grow, to train young people on my own voluntarily, then I don't need this job. So that is the first thing. You must be able to stand your ground at that point where this politician is giving you that employment. That's one. Two, you must be able to show this politician. Like I said, journalists, we are the third estate of the realm. We are the ones that control what happens. We control the politician. Now, the politician does not, he only knows that, oh, you have to do eye service to do this. That's their way. You have to do this, show yourself. He doesn't know that there are other creative strategies as a communication specialist that you could use to win elections, that you could use to do so many things. the Yes We Can campaign by Barack Obama that got him to win the election was through the media. Even Donald Trump used the media to creatively get himself back. So you must be able to show this media. I'll give another example of a former general manager of Sokoto State Media, a state-owned media, run by politicians. And he said to the governor, say, you said I should not allow these people to come on air. You said I should not allow people to say negative things about the government. See, don't you know that is when they say these things that you will know where problem is, then you will solve that problem and they will start liking you. We used to organize these master classes where we bring in GMs. We did a lot of stuff with MBC and INEC during the election period. We bring them together into stakeholder forum. On one of the occasions, Dr. Tony Orodia was there. He also shared his experience working with politicians and Obasanjo. So we have these people who have stood up even within this kind of difficult setting. Tony already has shared that former President Obasanjo told him was that anytime people come to complain, the ministers come to complain about you, that I should sack you. Remind me that on this day, I said I would not. I'm telling you, these guys shared this experience. And guess what? They did very, very well. And we could see the record of what they did. And we could see their standing in the society today, how they are respected. They are journalists. They are journalists even within this sector that help to foil coups in this country. But we don't know. But they did that creatively by doing some little things somewhere. We don't recognize them. I know them. You know, the person that created the popular phone-in program during the military era on Radio Nigeria, like Sonny Rabo, a lot of people don't know that he used that same program in a media platform owned by the government and the military in charge to say some certain things about the military. Yes, at one stage they locked him up for 1 month, but he told them why he needed to do that. Because if you don't hear what the people say, how would you know what to do? And I can tell you, because I followed, I was in Abuja here before government came in, working in the city. And then Abuja was a small community. Everybody was together. We all went to the same hospital, everything from Babangida, the head of state, down to the smallest person. And I can tell you that former head of state, General Ibrahim Babangida, used that in determining certain policies. For instance, he will bring out certain things, put it in the media. Then when he sees the way people react, if it's good, he continues with it. If it's not, he sets it aside. We don't talk about that part of him. It's the annulment we usually talk about. And I'm sure that came up as a result of the subtle work of people like Sonny Rabo on Radio Link, on Radio Nigeria. So there are creative ways you as a journalist can use to pass out information such that you wouldn't get into trouble. And that is what I advise. Then the third part is this internet thing we are talking about. The network is shaking again a little bit. Now, you have your space on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. There are so many things you could do even in your individual spaces as journalists. And the more you do these things, even your employers begin to see it. When they see the beauty of it, they will stop disturbing you. So that is an excuse. It is not a challenge, because there are creative ways to go around it. And we've seen it happen over time. The problem we are having is that we are not having enough media peer review to discuss these issues and talk about it. NUJ is 70 now. There's a lot of furore about celebrations going on. But the NUJ doesn't talk much about how to build the skills of its members, journalists, to be able to do the right thing and be the actual fourth estate of the realm.
All right, brilliant. When we commenced this interview, you did say that everybody has an agenda, including yourself. Now, when someone has an agenda, when the government has an agenda or a propaganda to push, where else do they push it? On the media. It's a great platform. Now, how are media practitioners supposed to tackle that issue where you find out that there's a particular agenda that is being pushed through the media, but not in the best interest of the people? How would you propose a media practitioner or media in general, goes about it?
Well, um, see, there are creative ways. I know I like mentioning some of these names because we don't celebrate them enough for what they did. Dr. Cyril Okeke was head of programs in Anambra, you know, for a long time in ABS Onitsha, doing all these things. And I remember he shared this story once after our trainings that we had with them, where the government said they should not take adverts from other political parties, only adverts from the ruling party. So there's always that agenda. Thank God we have the NBC and we have the NBC code there. That is one platform that journalists don't use. Journalists talk about the NBC when the NBC comes to fine stations, when you do something wrong, when you go against the code. That's when you get sanctioned and fined. You don't get sanctioned and fined when you can defend your case and you're doing the right thing. So when they come up to you like that, do what Dr. Cyril did. Before the NBC will come and find the station, he would inform the NBC, say, see what is going on. And the NBC will pay attention, and the NBC will find the station, write a letter to the station, and that letter will be forwarded to the Commissioner of Information. And many times it's not the governors of these states. It is the commissioners in most.
All right, welcome back. Mr. Leonard, please go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know where you lost me. I don't know exactly where you lost me, but
Yeah, you were talking about NBC coming for you when you break some of the codes.
Yes, and that is the best thing to use for your owner who is trying to push an agenda. You use the NBC. We had this stakeholders forum with INEC, with NBC. We shared a lot of these things to the GMs, and those were some of the strategies we used to bring these peaceful elections we are talking about over the years. You use the NBC, you send a letter to the NBC will find the station, and you could even do some preemptive activities. For instance, organize stuff, and that is why I'm calling upon the NBC. The NBC today, in fact, I think they are picking up a bit now, but in the last administration, it was really very poor, and I had to speak out against it. During the time of DG Emeka, that was when we did a lot of all these things. Organized stakeholders forum, not the one they are doing where you bring people to come talk down on the media, say, media, I need to do this, media, I need to do an interactive forum where you bring in the media, you bring in the commissioners of information, even the governors. You bring in, people like us, experts who are in that field to share some of all these issues, bring in organizations. Some of these names I've called here today, bring them in. And then let's talk about what are some of these challenges and the best ways to go about it. Some of these commissioners don't know jack about the NBC code. They don't know that they are breaking the broadcast code when they force stations. And guess what? These days, it is even more rampant with private-owned stations, of course, that are owned by politicians than even the state-owned stations. The state-owned stations are even doing better. Private-owned stations, There are just a few private owned stations. Like I thank God for a station like yours that's owned by broadcasters, stations that are owned by broadcasters. You find them doing a lot better in this angle. But stations owned by pure politicians, you find them doing more worse than the state-owned stations. So bring them together and show them what is in the broadcasting code and let them know that you do this, we'll shut down your station. It's as simple as that. This is democracy. It's not military era where the head of state doesn't need permission from anybody, just comes and he shuts down your station. It's very difficult for anybody to shut down your station now, without going through the NBC. The DSS comes up several times to do some certain things, but we see what happens. The media outcry is there, and then, it's resolved. Unlike military era where stations are just shut down, presenters whisked away, nobody is able to talk. It's it's open now, so explore the opportunities that are there, and the government needs to lead on this, because the truth is, in most cases, it is not the president or the governor of the state that does these things, this harassment, this censorship. It's usually some PA somewhere, and you'll be surprised that in some cases, even the media aid of whether the commissioner or somebody or the governor that does these things. That's why I say there is no harassment of the media, no media sidelining, no censorship, nothing, no corruption in this country that a media person is not involved. Those write-ups that are shared are written in many cases by media people. They are the ones that do the write-up. They are the ones that do all the things and pass to the governor and the president to now use to sanction the media. So use the NBC very well. Organize events. Invite people like us on air. The governor will be watching. The president will be watching. We'll talk about these things that will say, oh, really? I didn't know. If they know better, they won't do it. But in many cases, they don't know because the media does not tell them. And the media is supposed to tell them what to do.
All right. The Freedom of Information Act, which I'm sure you're well aware of, which was signed into law in 2011, how has it actually helped investigative journalism, especially during this era of democracy?
Yes, and I talked about the NBC, you using the NBC, and then you being creative, and then using your own space. And I mentioned things around us having stakeholders and interactive forum, doing peer review amongst ourselves. Now, and I also think I mentioned also that the media is the one that does these things. There is no corruption. There's nothing that is done that the media is not involved. Now, President Goodluck Jonathan passed that Freedom of Information, what's it called, Act into law, right? It's now a law. It is there for us to use. What it means is that you could walk up to any government agency, any MDA, any public office and demand for certain information, and they should give it to you. Now, let's note that also that there are sensitive information that, because we always have these issues with the DSS and some other people, there are sensitive information that might not be given to you to put out in the public. But we don't even need to go that far. Let's start with the basic information. Something that used to happen during the Goodluck Jonathan era that has stopped since the Buhari era. Every month, the government will publish allocation to various ministries, various MDAs in the newspaper. We did training for journalists on budget monitoring. The late Jikato, one of my mentors, was one of the lead trainers on that project. The way to stop corruption is not when something has happened, you come on air, you begin to shout, you begin to make noise. I don't even know how many media organizations have insurance for their staff. So that fear is there. You're afraid of your personal safety. So when you're scared of your safety and your family that you have to take care of, you might start, slowing down on some certain things you could do. Now, we creatively train people out to do that. And one way is to follow the money. When the budget is released, when they release that budget, even
Signature TV. News in your pocket.